Hello, welcome back. We are on the last part of the axial skeletal system. We are on page 179 in your book. We're going to talk about the vertebral column, the vertebrae, and the ribs. So this I'm holding up is the entire vertebral column. You can see up here at the top I have 7 cervical vertebrae. Then I have 12 thoracic vertebrae. There are 5 lumbar, and then we have the sacrum and the coccyx. The sacrum is in blue, the coccyx is in green, and then I'm also going to show you those individually in just a minute. All right, so remember, we have 7 cervical, 12 thoracic, 5 lumbar, 1 sacrum, and 1 coccyx. I try to give my students little mnemonics here and there, and the one thing that I say is you have breakfast at 7, lunch at noon, dinner at 5, 1 snack, and 1 cocktail. And that's from my grandma. She always said a cocktail a day kept the doctor away. So there's a way for you to remember how many vertebrae we have. All right, so I'm going to show you the sacrum and coccyx up close in just a second here. So there we have the vertebral column. Okay. Okay, so the sacrum, here I have it disarticulated from the skeleton. So this right here is just kind of indicating the sacrum. And you're actually looking at the anterior aspect here, and it is actually highlighted in orange. So that would be the sacrum versus the coccyx, which is here, and here's the same view, the anterior view here. All right, so sacrum has basically 5, there are 5 bones fused together to form one, and then the coccyx is anywhere from 3 to 5 depending on the person. So those are a picture, there we go, of the sacrum versus the coccyx. Now in your book we also talk about specific vertebrae, and I want to show you those next. So we have actually C1, which is right here. This is cervical vertebrae number 1. This is actually called atlas. C1 is atlas. Right here, these 2 little indentations here, this is where your occipital condyles of the occipital bone sit, and that forms our joint for our head. When we shake our head, yes, up and down, moving it up and down, as in if you were to say yes, that is Atlas here. Atlas held the world up on his shoulders. He was a Greek god. Okay, so Atlas is C1, and it's very distinct. It's a very weird looking bone. Okay, so C1.
Hold it sideways. There you go.
Okay, there's C1. And the next bone is at axis, and this one is unique also in that it has this little protrusion here that is called the dens. If you can see it. Can you see it pretty good?
If you...
Oops. And there it goes.
Okay, let's try it again.
Okay, can you see it better? There we go. Okay, so that is C2, which is named axis. So on the test, I'm looking for the names of these 2 bones. And how they go together is atlas is C1, so it's first, axis is 2, so it is second. And axis kind of pivots inside
Take them
number
apart
1.
and put them together again like that. Do it a little bit slower so
Okay.
that they can see
Hang on.
how that.
Let's see if I can
Okay.
hold it this way. There we go. Okay. They go together like that. C1 is on the top. C2 is on the bottom here.
And then
An
pivot.
axis
Right.
pivots. Axis is C2. That is so that you can shake your head no. No, no, no. Okay. So C1, very clearly different in shape. And C2 is pretty different also in shape. So that's why we have specific names for these first 2 vertebrae, cervical vertebrae. All right, now, next up are the vertebrae themselves. And we have, so here is a vertebrae. And this one is probably a lumbar vert. And I'm actually going to show you the body. So this part that is highlighted in orange is called the body of the vertebrae, or vertebral body. Okay, body of the vertebrae. And then we have what is known as the spinous process. So here it's kind of like his nose. I always say these kind of look like giraffe or moose, and it is the tip of the, oh, there we go. Okay. So that is the spinous process. That's the part you can feel when you run your finger down somebody's spine. That's the spinous process. It's right down the center of the body. Now, besides the spinous process, there is another one, and these are called the transverse processes. So transverse, it's kind of like, this guy kind of looks like a giraffe to me, and you can see his ears. Okay, so that's the transverse processes, transverse. And then there's another structure, and this is where the spinal cord actually, whoops, oh, I got a shadow. Can you see it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that is where the spinal cord passes through. I have it highlighted in orange. I actually have where I can actually put something through the center of that. There we go. Okay, so I can actually have a probe going through that hole. And again, that is where your spinal cord passes through. That is called the vertebral foramen or spinal foramen, and it's highlighted in orange. Vertebral foramen or spinal foramen. There are 2 other structures in your book. I'm going to try to show them to you. They're very difficult to actually point out, but this is the vertebra here, and this is the inferior portion of it. Actually, if I orient it correctly, it would be like this. Oops, here we go, down here. Okay, so now can you see the orange down there?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to put my probe right here.
Yep.
Okay, so that is called the inferior notch. Now right above it, that is the superior notch. I have another one here that has the superior notch kind of highlighted in orange. When I put 2 vertebrae together, that inferior notch and superior notch of one forms, can you see it on
Here,
there?
if you, I know this isn't the right fitting, but then you can see it together.
A little better?
Yeah.
There we go.
See?
So this is where your spinal nerves pass through. The superior notch of one and the inferior notch of the other form the little hole in which your spinal nerves pass through. Okay? And lastly, we have our ribs. So the ribs individually as a bone, okay, let's see, they're kind of, I don't know, kind of like a comma shape, okay? kind of like a comma shape. There we go. And there are 3 parts to a rib. There is a head of a rib, and it is kind of rounded a little bit like a head. So let me pull that up there so you can see the head of the rib. Turn it, take it out of the way. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a head. And right below the head would be the neck. So there is a neck of a rib. And then we have a bump. And the little bumpy part is the tubercle of the rib. So head, neck, tubercle. Head, neck, and tubercle. Okay, I'm going to have to pause for a second because I've got to bring in a skeleton to show you the next part or the last part of our axial system. So 1 second. All right, last page, 179 in your book, and the last little column, we talked about the ribs, and now we're going to talk about the parts of the ribs. Now we have the 3 different types of ribs. So ribs number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 are known as true ribs. And the reason they're called true ribs is because they directly connect to the sternum by way of this costal cartilage. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 directly connect to the sternum, and they are called true ribs. 8, 9, 10, technically 11 and 12 are considered to be false ribs. Now 8, 9, and 10 all converge together and then they connect to the sternum. Now 11 and 12, I'm going to pull him a little closer. 11 and 12 are called floating ribs. And hopefully we can start to see, I'm going to turn him so that you can see the floating ribs.
Okay, and then point out the false ones.
So this is 12, 11, 10, 9, and 8. Those 3 are your false ribs, and these last 2 we call floating ribs. So this is 11, and this is rib number 12. And that is it for all the bony structures and the bones of the body. All right, so happy studying, and I will see you next just before we take our test.